Om Shri Sai Ram. So as we begin our next session, which is the main guest speaker, Dr. Suresh Mohan's talk, I would like to give a brief introduction to Dr. Suresh Mohan. Dr. Suresh Mohan is currently an assistant professor at Yale University, specializing in facial, plastic and reconstructive surgery. He serves as a volunteer faculty at Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Medical Sciences. You recall that I was referring to free medical service being offered at Sathya Sai Super Specialty Hospital. Who does that? It is doctors like Suresh Mohan who go to India just with the intent of doing service to Swami, that they perform surgeries free of cost to his devotees at his hospitals. So he is a guest faculty, volunteer faculty at Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Medical Sciences, and he has been involved with international medical service work in Haiti and in India, and most recently in Ukraine. With nearly 3 decades of connection to Swami's mission, Dr. Mohan and his family continue to remain in service of Sai, and he has directed plays and films as part of the Sai Young Adults and is a bhajan aficionado. He grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, did his training in Boston, and currently resides in Connecticut with his wife Rasika and their 2 children, Lalita and Shashank. Sister Rasika will be singing and making an offering of music in the evening today. And for now, we have Dr. Suresh Mohan. I just want to mention the amount of dedication some of the devotees like Dr. Suresh Mohan have. When I asked him to be a guest speaker for our group here, he had a commitment yesterday to attend the Detroit Sai Center program as a part of birthday celebrations. So he flew from Boston to Detroit to be there as guest speaker, I presume, there. So from Detroit, he flew directly to Orlando just to be here with us so that he can share his experiences. And you can all imagine how hard that is for a family with 2 young children who are running around. You can see them, right? So we really appreciate Dr. Suresh Mohan that you made the effort and took the time to be here with us to share your experiences. I request you to please.
Sairam, everyone, it's such a privilege and honor to be here with you all today. I want to thank specifically Bhaskar Garu, Vasu Garu, and Kumar and Suma for arranging this, and this opportunity really means so much to us. And initially when it came up as a conflict, I was telling Swami, like, it's so hard to say no when Swami gives an opportunity, but somehow Swami has created something where both events will be able to be successfully performed. So I thought I'd begin by talking about my thought process behind this. So here we are, 100 years of our dear Bhagawan. And I was thinking, okay, so it's Swami's birthday. What do we do on someone's birthday? We give them a gift. So as we heard Bhaskar Garu say, what is the gift that we should give Swami on this momentous birthday? And so as I thought about it, I realized that there's only one gift, really, that Swami wants from all of us. And that's our faith. Our faith. Our faith in him is our way of showing gratitude for everything he's given us. And so I want to spend the next few minutes talking a little bit about my faith journey, how I came to Swami and how I went from not really being involved with the Sai fold at all to suddenly being involved very deeply. So it began, as most things, with my parents. When we were young, we had the classic immigrant story. We moved from India when we were very young children. It's my mom, my father, my older brother, and I. And when we lived in Canada for a little while, and we moved to the United States in 1996. So this was almost 30 years ago. And at the time, my mother was a very big Muruga devotee, and so we would go to the Muruga temple every Friday. We would go to the Lakshmi temple on Sundays. This was in Canada. But when we moved to Columbia, Missouri, there was no nearby temples. And so this was a challenge for my parents because they're so used to going to temples. And so we heard that there were some Sathya Sai Baba bhajans happening in someone's basement. And so we began to go to these bhajans. And of course, I was 7 years old at the time. And I remember thinking, who is this guy with the afro? And why are we here, singing these bhajans? And so I think initially there was a lot of resistance of not feeling comfortable, not feeling sure of why are people singing to this guy. But as a child, what are the things that draw you? The music, right? The music is the first thing that drew my brother and I, and so we started learning to sing some bhajans, and it gave us something to do when we came. We had to keep coming, and of course, some weeks we didn't feel like coming, but we came because our parents brought us. And with time, we became slightly more involved. And eventually we left Columbia, we moved to Manhattan, Kansas. So you thought there was no community in Columbia, Missouri. We're in the middle of Kansas, there's nothing. So what do we have to do? We end up deciding to start the center within our own home in Manhattan, Kansas. And so when we started doing that, slowly we started having more and more people starting to come join the center, and we started feeling a little bit more ownership. Okay, like we have to carry on the center, and I saw my parents really take that role. They went from being attendees to suddenly being organizers. And just through all this, I have to give credit to my parents. Life as an immigrant, I think everyone knows this experience, but we came from humble means, right? And so initially when we moved from India to the United States, we were sharing an apartment with another family of 4. So there's basically a 2-bedroom apartment with 8 people living in a spot. This was when my father was a graduate student. And so from a young age, we even shared a car. There was one car between the 8 of us. And so there was all these complex drop-off pickup schedules for school. And but what the lesson we learned was how to live harmoniously with others, even when you don't have much. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And any time there was a struggle that came up, I always heard from my mom, Swami will take care of us. Swami will take care of it. And that lesson, eventually began as Muruga will take care of us, slowly turned into Swami will take care of us. But the concept is the same. And the concept, as children, you're kind of like, oh yeah, it's the same thing. I'm not going to say the same thing every time something happens. But sometimes somehow you internalize that message. And so later on, when my father lost his job, or when we didn't have the means to buy the house we wanted to buy, these were all challenges. And as a child, you're like, well, they have a house, why don't we have a house? Or why do we have to move again because of Appa's job? And these were all thoughts that came to the mind, but every time the answer was the same. Swami has a plan, Swami will take care of us. So eventually we moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan. And when we got there, there was a turning point because we went to the center and they had a very much larger established center here at the Detroit Sai Center. And there, it was the first time that I saw other children my age in the SSE classes. So it wasn't just, I'm going to the center because my parents are taking me. It's, wow, there's other people my age who are involved and really enjoy the being as part of the center and the SSE class. And so suddenly SSE takes on a much bigger role as a student. And I am excited to go to Sai Center because I have I have friends there, and it's not just about going because somebody's telling me to. So that's the first spark that I have of my personal investment in the center, and not just because of the family. And so I'm very grateful because during that SSE class, I had a teacher. His name was Mark Bayless. And Mark So one day for our SSE3 group 3 class, he came in and he brought a big bag full of posters. Okay. So in that bag was several posters with photos. And so within each photo, let me 1 second, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, is everybody able to see that? Okay, good. Okay, great. So in the bag, there were all these different posters that were rolled up. And he said, each student, he said, Swami has each one of you has a specific poster that Swami wants you to take from this bag. And so he went around the classroom and everyone is drawing different photos. And my turn came up and I pulled out this photo. And so if you can see this photo, this is the photo of Gajendra, who's the king of elephants, right? So Gajendra was the king of the jungle, of the elephant herd, and very well respected. But of course, he's a big king, so big ego. One day he's walking through the jungle and he's trying to cross the river and he meets with a crocodile who suddenly bites his leg. And it's said in the scriptures that there's a struggle that begins between them. So Gajendra pulls and tries to get his leg away, and the crocodile will not let go. I don't have to give any introduction to alligators or crocodiles here. But the crocodile did not let go, and so it's said that he struggled, and initially he was his ego is offended, and he's like, why? How can someone get in my way? But eventually he struggles and realizes he needs help. And it's at that moment he reaches up and prays and puts faith in the Lord. And of course, that minute Vishnu comes down to save him. So I'm hearing this story and I'm like, great, that's good for Gajendra. I don't really have an ego. It's not a problem for me. Not really applicable. Thanks, but no thanks. Little would I know that later on in life, this photo would take on much more significance. And so after getting slowly involved in SSE, we started seeing examples of Swami's students, people like Bhaskar Garu, who would come and present their stories and their experiences with Swami. And as young kids, my older brother and I became very enamored with the idea of studying in Swami's school. If we can get such an experience from being across the world, what would it be like to live and breathe Swami's message for however many years? So it turns out at the Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, they accept at 2 stages, at first standard or at the 11th standard. So both of us were in high school at the time. And so my brother decides that he's going to submit an application for Swami School. So we get the paperwork together, get everything submitted. So this is maybe, April, May timeframe. Submits an application, and he gets an interview called. And so suddenly he's telling all of his friends in the United States, I don't know, I may not be coming back to high school here. I'm going to India. And so he drops everything. He goes to India with my mom, and he meets with the school staff. They're very impressed by his English, of course. And but he does very well in the entrance exam. Everything's going well, and then it's the day for the final list to be posted of students. And we're all waiting with bated breath. And the list is posted, and he goes and he looks through the list, and his name is not there. And so, of course, he was crushed by this, and the family was very disappointed, but eventually he ended up coming back to the United States. We said, okay, we tried, maybe it just wasn't meant to be. After a few months, the next year comes around, and, anybody who has an older sibling or a sibling at all, the only goal in life you have is to beat your sibling at anything, right? So my turn comes along, and I tell my parents, I'm going to apply, and I'm going to go. And they say, okay, fine, you can apply. So I apply, get everything ready. I'm feeling really good about this. It's my turn. Flat out rejection. They don't even give an interview. They don't even say come. And so it's not even an option. And so, of course, I was very disappointed, but I refused to believe that there was something wrong with me. And so I reached out to people. I said, what was the problem? Like, why did we not get it? And basically what we were told was American students don't have the discipline to study in Indian schools. So that's why we require Indian residency to really take students. Whether that was true or not, that's what we were told. So not willing to be outdone, I decide, okay, I will go to India, I will study, and then I will apply again. So I'll repeat, if I have to repeat 11th grade again, I'll do it again so that I can get into Swami school. My parents, of course, are, they understand that I'm flustered. They say, okay, summa okare, like, just relax. It's gonna be okay. But I'm very persistent, and I keep telling them, no, I want to do this. I'm going to go to Swami school. And you know, I'm 14 at the time, lots of life wisdom, right? And but I'm headstrong, and I decide I want to do this. So credit to my parents, they say, okay, fine, we will do it. So 2 weeks later, I tell all my friends, I may never come back, see you later. And then we get on a plane to go to India. We get there, and this is May, and as you know, the school year starts in June in India, right? So May is extremely late to be trying to find admission somewhere. So we go to Alike, we try Mudanali, we try all these other, like, the main known schools, and then we try other schools in Chennai, and nothing is available. Nothing, everything is closed. Until finally we go to Bangalore and found this very small school in Banaswadi region called Sathya Sai College. We walk in, and the founder has a huge picture of Swami on the wall, and we're like, okay, this is it. Like, this, this has to be a good option. And so we talked to him, and we explained that, we're here for Swami, and this is why. And he says, okay, fine, we'll do it. And I remember at the time the fees for the so he said you'd live in the hostel for a year, and then you'll attend the college. And then he said if you want to apply again at the end of the year, you can. We were willing to take anything we could get at this point, and so we said yes. And I remember the fees for the hostel and the education, everything together for 1 year was 37,000 rupees, which 20 years ago was more substantial. So soon thereafter, my mom left, and I was living in the hostel with mostly boys from the villages, right? From the boys from the villages that come and live in the hostel. So they don't speak English. They all speak Kannada. I speak Tamil. I don't know Kannada. So very quickly, I pick up Kannada. Of course, I learned the bad words first, how to scold people. Adjusting to hostel life very quickly. It's a very different setting from being an American teenager to suddenly being in a hostel setting in India. And so, you get 1 bucket of hot water every morning for the bath. And some days if the generator is not working, good luck, cold water. And it's 2 rotis is what you get for dinner. And it's just very rationed, everything. But despite all that, I built a camaraderie with those boys, and we all, for whatever reason, they called me USA. Just that was my nickname. But as fun as it was in some ways, when you're young, you don't realize, you just kind of accept that this is my reality now. But there were moments that were challenging, where people didn't think of Swami the way that I thought about Swami. In fact, many of the local newspapers would publish all kinds of nonsense about Swami, except it was all written in Kannada, so I couldn't even read it. But the boys, they would bring in the newspapers, and they would sit and they would read, and they would all howl in laughter and jest about, see this USA, he came here for this guy, and look what this guy actually is doing, or whatever. Just like really awful things that were really hard for me to hear. And it was the first time that I felt my faith was being tested. And I could tell, in my mind, I was like, Swami, what is happening? Did I make a big mistake? Is the joke on me? Was I as the fool in coming all the way here? So to try and counteract, what I would do is every time we had a holiday, I would just take a bus from Bangalore to Puttaparthi and just go and be in the ashram and try to spend as much time in the ashram as possible. So my way of getting through the year was really just leaning on Swami as much as possible, and the year was actually was challenging. I got sick. I mean, my American blood was not used to living in India, and so respiratory infections, terrible bronchitis. But when you have a cold, the boys will be like, oh yeah, you take this cotton, you light it on fire, and then you breathe in the cotton fumes, and then it'll clear your sinuses. Just terrible, terrible toxic things that you should not do. And I remember like skin infections, things. But I quickly realized that the health literacy of these schools and the boys was extremely low. They didn't realize the importance of having good health care and listening to doctors' advice and things like that. So there's always also a spark in my mind of, oh, maybe I could go into medicine. Maybe I could help people that way. So the end of the year comes around, and it's time to reapply for Swami school. So I'm like, okay, I put in my time. This is going to go well. And so I get my application together, and I submit everything, and I'm praying to Swami every day. Swami, you cannot say no to me now. I mean, look at what I've done for you. And so a month later goes by, and I get a phone call from my relative, and she says, hey, there's something here in the mail for you. So, I take the 2-hour journey by bus from the hostel out to their house to go. And once I get there, they just casually throw this card at me. They said, hey, here it is. And I take the card and I turn it, rejected. So 15 years old, 1 year later, and I'm just flabbergasted. I'm like, Swami, what else do you want me to do? What else can I do? And so I go, and back then they had the STD, ISD booths, right? If you wanted to make a phone call. So I ran down the street to the nearest ISD booth and called my parents, and I broke down. And I was like, Swami, what does Swami want from me? Like, why? But they said, they were of course upset as well, and it was hard because our visa status was in flux right there. We were applying for green cards, so you can't leave the country in the middle of your processing or whatever. And so there's a question of, could I even go back to the United States or not? So then I was feeling stuck. I'm like, oh, I can't even go back to I couldn't hit undo on this decision. So we decided, okay, might as well just go to Puttaparthi and find Swami and see what we can do. Just ask Swami directly. So I, in my, again, infinite wisdom at age 15, I decided to go directly from where I was standing to the bus stand. Did not take enough clothes, did not take any cash. So all I had is like my school, the bag. I had like a shirt and a pair of pants and maybe 150 rupees in my pocket. But we get there, get to Puttaparthi. I realized that I have to stay in the sheds because that's the only thing I can afford. And so, the sheds in the back, if you've never been inside, it's like it's just like one of those massive sheds, and then everyone just sleeps on the floor. And the floors are stone, and they give you little pieces of cardboard that you can use as a mattress. And I used my school bag as a pillow. And, I was there with nothing to lose. Basically, I told Swami, I'm here for you. I'll do whatever it takes to get into your school. So, all I could afford was these 5 rupee soaps that they sell in, the shops in the corner street, and I got that. And basically every day I had to wash my clothes overnight because I didn't have something to wear for the next day. So it became this routine of just go to darshan, sit in the lines all day, and then come back the evening, wash clothes, get ready for the next day, that type thing. And then Swami, would come by during darshan, and I'm holding my application and a letter, and he would come, and some days he would just look with a kind of an empty expression, and he'd go by. Other days he came by, and he'd do this characteristic expression. Some days, he's lost in thought. But, I could tell that I was not getting anywhere. I was not making progress, and so finally, I reach out to our family friends and I say, what do I do? And don't get me wrong. I was waking up at 3 a.m. to be the first person at the bottom. Back in those days, on the other side of the Ganesha gate, they used to line people up down that hill on the way to the medical campus. And then you get called and your tokens get put in and all those lines. And so my goal is to be at the front of that line so that I can be in the front row during darshan. But our family friend said, okay, why don't you do this? Why don't you go and try to meet with the headmaster of the school and present your case and see what he says. And so they say, okay, come on Monday at 10 a.m. So all weekend I'm worried about what am I going to say to this man, and how am I going to present this. And so finally Monday morning rolls around, and I'm waiting there at 10 o'clock, and of course he comes strolling in at 11:30, on time. And he's surrounded by like 5 or 6 people, his associates, and somehow I'm able to grab his attention. So his name was I'll call him Mr. Rajkumar just for privacy purposes. So I say, Rajkumar sir, like, this is my story. I've spent a year here. All I want is Swami. Please reconsider the decision on my application. And he says, a rejection's a rejection. There's nothing I can do. I'm sorry. Well, he doesn't say I'm sorry, of course. And so then he turns about to go about his business, and then I plead with him. I have nothing to lose. I say, sir, I will fall at your feet, whatever it takes. Please understand, I want nothing else but this. This is my only goal. And he turns and he says, either get out or I'll have the security take you out. So again, another rejection in a very humiliating way. But I knew that was the end. And so then I walked out, and I walked all the way back in tears. But I could tell that it was clear. The answer was clear from Swami that this was not meant to be. But there's always this longing inside of like, why did this happen? Like, what was wrong with me? And I had no answer for why this would happen. So we come back, eventually made my way back to the United States. And so I get back to the US, and I decide, okay, if I can't go to Swami school, I'm applying for college that fall. And so I say, I'm gonna go to Harvard, or I'm gonna go to Stanford. Stanford, rejected. Harvard, rejected. And so it's just like hit after hit after hit. And I say, okay, fine, I'll go anywhere but the University of Michigan. Why? Because we live in Ann Arbor, so it's like you don't want to go to your backyard school, right? Where do I end up going? University of Michigan. And so, a couple of years into college, I've become very involved with the young adults group in Detroit. And we had a couple of old students who were part of the group, and they said, okay, there's this World Youth Conference that's coming in 2007. And they said, what if we took a group of the United States young adults and we go to Swami's, we go and perform in Puttaparthi. And so this was a very exciting idea, of course, to have the students be our inspiration. And this was everything my brother and I we wanted and wished we could be part of. So very enthusiastic about it. And so actually my brother and I had learned Bharatanatyam growing up. And so the students who were leading the group, they said, why don't you guys practice a dance and we can have that be one of the pieces as part of our offering. So we begin planning 7 months in advance. So this is January of 2007, and we're practicing every month. We're getting together, people from Chicago, Michigan, we're all Ohio, everyone's getting together every month to try and practice. And finally, the July rolls around, so it's time to get going. And so we get there on the ground, and everyone is super excited, right? I mean, we've worked so hard for this. We're finally there as a group. So there's probably a group of 60 people. And so 2 days before, we find out that we have, our student leaders are talking to the administration. They say, we have no records of your group coming. You did not go through the formal channels. You did not register. We cannot allow you to perform. So of course, this is a big, big blow to the whole team. Thanks, Open. And a big blow to the whole group. And everyone is very disappointed that everything that we worked for is suddenly not going to happen. And so everyone decides that the only way that we can move forward is if we start praying to Swami, and we'll keep our practice. We'll keep practicing our songs, etc., and see what happens. But as you know, when you take a big group of people from America to India, there's bound to be people that get sick, right? So people are starting to get sick, morale is going down, we have no confirmed program, what are we doing with all these practices? So the night before, on the evening of July 30th, the group, all of our leaders said, okay, you know what, we're canceling practice this afternoon. Everyone go and just like take some time to relax, like, take a break. So my brother and I, we've been getting ready, and part of our costumes for the dance was a chunni that you tie around your waist as part of the dance, and we hadn't bought chunnis, and so we said, okay, perfect opportunity, let's go out into the city and we'll purchase these chunnis. So of course, me as a veteran Indian, having lived in Bangalore for a year, I wanted to show off to my brother my bargaining skills on the street. So we found a local store, and we go in, and I found two chunnis, and I was like, okay, sir, how much? And he says, 700 rupees. I was like, yeah, okay, I know your type, 200. And the guy laughs, and he says, you go, please, you go. And so, of course, I can't lose face in front of my brother, so then we're going back and forth. He says 500, I say, whatever, 300. Finally, he says 400. And then, not willing to be outdone, I say 385. He's like, whatever, just get out at this point. So then I reach into my pocket and I realize I forgot my wallet. So I'm like, Swami, well, what is this? This is like utter embarrassment, not just in front of my brother, but in front of this guy, the shop owner too. And so I'm reaching and pulling, and I find a 200s somewhere, I find another 100 somewhere, a 50. I look at my brother, I'm like, what do you have in cash? He has nothing, didn't bring anything at all. And then I'm like, so somehow I get to 380, and I'm like, Swami, I can't, cannot walk away, can't lower the price anymore, this is it. And somehow in my pocket, there's a 5 rupee coin. So I give it to them, and we purchase it, we walk out. I don't think of it much at the moment, but the next day comes, and we're sitting in darshan, and suddenly we see our leader get called by Raja Reddy sir, and he says, there's a phone call from you from Satyajit. And our student, Murli Kaja, he goes up and he gets on the phone, and he turns to all of us and he says, instruments. Implying that we're going now, go get everything, like the program's happening. So everyone gets up from Kulwant Hall, we're like racing, running all the way back to N Block, and you have to rally the troops, get all the sick people up, wake them up, get them dressed, get them showered, everyone we gotta go, and so all these arrangements are happening, and it's just like you're on this high because Swami has invited you, and there's nothing greater in the world than that feeling. So we get everybody together, and we finally, an hour later or whatever, we get settled for that afternoon. And luckily, we had our chunnis ready to go for the program. And the program begins. And so until then, what had been happening is Swami was allowing other groups, because it was the World Youth Conference, so there was people from around the world there, and he was allowing these other groups to perform 1 or 2 songs just because he wanted to give multiple people chances. And so it was 2 songs, 3 songs per group. We had 12 prepared, and then we had bhajans prepared after that. So we were very worried that Swami will only give us a couple. And then our dance was actually the 4th item after those first couple songs. And so we started performing, and Swami actually initially sat on the ladies' side, and then he actually asked his wheelchair to be brought over to be placed right in front of us. And so the first 3 songs go by, and then suddenly everyone's having this moment of is he gonna say something? And the students are like, go, go, go. So suddenly we walked up the veranda to Swami, and we took his blessings, and then we came back to start the dance. And needless to say, performing in front of Swami is just a surreal experience. You have 10,000 people behind you, you have the Lord of the universe in front of you, and all you're hoping is that you don't go off balance and fall holding a pose. So it's kind of a poor picture, but that's my brother and I there. And I remember, they talk about Shiva's third eye, burning any negativity. And I could feel myself holding this pose and being burnt into the ground. There's just a surreal feeling. And after the dance, Swami called us up, and we didn't even expect this, but he suddenly, we were going to just take Pada Namaskar and leave, and then there was this flurry of commotion, and we looked back, and Swami had produced a chain. So he put the chain on me, and he said, "Ulla Portugal," means like put it inside. Didn't think much of it, and so then we turned to leave, and then of course my brother. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, what about my brother? And then suddenly there's another commotion, and Swami produced a ring and gave him a ring, and I think people come up after and be like, "Oh my God, you're so blessed," but really, in retrospect, the biggest thing that we learn from that is Swami says, "To those who have given much, I expect much." And really, so it was a reminder that of the standards to which he expects us to live and carry out his message. This is just some photos from the aftermath. So not only did Swami let us finish our whole program, he let us finish all of our bhajans that we had performed. And I remember we got to sing. I sang "Love Is My Form" with my brother and another friend, and this is just us like debriefing the event back on the end block after, and it was just one of the most meaningful events. And why it was we had put months and months, with faith in Swami that he would take us through, and then to see challenges come up and see maybe this might not happen, but then at the very moment to see him go above and beyond. And he even during the program, he made these small comments that showed that he was with us every step of the way, every practice. He had heard those inside jokes, and he knew every moment of what was happening. So it was just an eye-opening experience for us, and so rejuvenated a lot of my faith in terms of Swami knowing what I was doing and caring about me. But there was always this little thing in the back of my mind of like, but if you could do all this, then why didn't you take us into your school? So fast forward a couple of years, and we decide to apply to medical school, right? So I had those experiences in India. I eventually decided I'm going to go into medicine, perhaps also because my brother went into medicine, but. And so, I thought of this story. So this story is the story of when Duryodhana and Arjuna come to Krishna before the Kurukshetra war. And so Krishna is resting, and when he wakes up, he sees Duryodhana sitting at his side, but he sees Arjuna first because Arjuna is standing reverently at his feet. And he asks Arjuna, he says, "Okay, I give you two options. I can give you my 1 million man army, or I can give you me, but I will not fight." Arjuna, of course, we know, chooses him. And Duryodhana looks at him and says, "You fool, I will take the army, and that's how I will win the war." But the lesson of this story is that when you choose Bhagawan, he will take care of every need and everything that you need. And so when I was applying to medical school, I had a couple of different options that were coming up in the Midwest. And I was trying to decide what I should take, and I wasn't sure. And suddenly I had this invitation from the East Coast and New England, which was very unfamiliar. I'm a Midwestern guy at heart. I had spent all my life there between Missouri, Kansas, Michigan. And so I was getting ready to go, and they were giving good financial packages, etc. But then there's this option from the East Coast, and so I didn't know what to do. And so I'd been asking Swami, like, "Swami, give me a sign. Which school should I go to? What should I do?" And usually these things don't work for me. You hear people like Shrikant Sola say, "And then I got a 1600 perfect score on the SAT score because Swami, like, nothing that I tried that stuff. It never worked for me." So I was always just asking Swami, give me some sort of sign. And one day in the mail, I get this letter, and it's unmarked. I don't know who it's from, but it's one of those Swami cards. I open the card, and it's that picture of Swami wearing a stethoscope. It's a black and white picture, and Swami's like using the stethoscope to examine somebody. And inside the card, it says, "Sairam Suresh, congrats on your acceptance to Brown. May Baba bless you." I'm like, who is this from? But at that moment, you have those moments where something strikes and you're like, this is Swami. And so for whatever reason, I mean, probably the wise thing to do at that moment would have been to, okay, put each acceptance offer side by side, weigh the benefits and risks, and But I didn't do any of that. Something told me, okay, Swami says go here, I'm gonna go here. I call my other 3 schools, I withdraw my acceptances, and I call Brown and I tell them I'm gonna do it. And the reason I bring this story up is that the next 4 to 5 years of moving to New England, out of my comfort zone, away from my family, was one of the best decisions I've ever made, not just career-wise, but personally. And it led to eventually meeting my future wife. It led to career opportunities in terms of training at Harvard, and it just expanded things in a way I couldn't have even imagined. And so, it's just funny because some of the pieces were falling in place. It's like, Swami, I told you I wanted to go to Harvard, but it didn't work out. And then suddenly Swami's like, okay, now you will go and I want you to go train at Harvard. So all these things work out. And, even in the middle of medical school, there's still small stories where Swami teaching lessons. So I had a close roommate named Joe. And once there was a competition in the school for a scholarship. And the scholarship was for medical students interested in music. And so I was like, oh, this is great. I was a music major in college. Like, I'm going to do this. And so I'm writing. Of course, I procrastinated till the very last minute. So the deadline is tonight at midnight, and I'm working on it now, trying to get it together. My roommate comes over and he says, hey, what are you up to? Now, Joe was a very good musician. Played guitar, played piano, had a lot of experience. And so I told him, oh, I'm working on this application. And he's like, oh, I'm going to apply too. I forgot that was due today. And then in my mind, I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have told him. Terrible thought, right? But it's just how Swami tests you. And so, but I'm like, no, I have to do the right thing. You have to tell him what you're doing, be honest. And so I tell him, and he submits an application too. And then 2 weeks later, we find out who gets the scholarship, Joe. And so, of course, in my mind, I'm like, Swami, how is this fair? I did the right thing. I was honest. I told him I thought that was supposed to work. What happened? But eventually a year later, I applied again a year later, and that time I was fortunate to get it. But it was just a small lesson again of like, when you're ready, he will give you what you need. And if you're not ready, no matter how hard you try, you're not going to get it. So that was another moment that was eye-opening for me. So fast forward a couple of years, I get married, and we have our first child. And so by that point, I had selected, my initial training was in ENT, ear, nose, and throat surgery. And Reski had actually ended up choosing speech therapy, which is also a related field. We work very closely together, taking care of kids and adults with hearing and speech issues. So anyone who's had a child knows what this is. This is a newborn hearing screen. So this is Lalita, our daughter, at about 10 hours of life. And the audiologist had come in to make sure that the newborn can hear. And so Lalita, she passes on one ear, and in the other ear, she doesn't pass for whatever reason. They say, don't worry, it's not a big deal. We'll come back tomorrow. Sometimes there's just some material left over from birth. And in my mind, of course, the surgeon mentality, I'm running through every possibility of what could be going on. Why is this happening? And but then there's also the spiritual side of me that's like, Swami, is this a test? You have a ENT surgeon married to a speech therapist. If there's anyone equipped to take care of a deaf child, it's us. So is this the next challenge that you're going to present to us? But at the same time, my wife is a classical musician. Music is her life, breath, and soul. And so to have a child that can't have all faculties to be able to enjoy that, it was just extremely, extremely sad and stressful to think about what this might be. The next morning comes by, and they do the test again, passes on the right ear, fails on the left ear. So then I'm worried. And so what they say is now we have to wait 6 weeks, and then we will do it again once the child's a little bit older. So of course, for the next 6 weeks, we're like, Lalita, can you hear us? Hoping, wondering what might be happening. And during that whole time, we're going through these emotional roller coasters of are we going to have a child with deafness? How are we going to take care of this child? How is this going to impact our lives? And of course, my mom's with us in the newborn period, and it's hard enough taking care of newborn, and then you have this stress on top of it. Made us have so much appreciation for those parents who have taken care of children with disabilities. Eventually, my mom, of course, same message, Swami will take care. Swami will take care, don't worry. Of course, we're at this point, we're labeling that as toxic positivity and saying, I must stop. It's not helpful. But she means well. The time rolls around for the 6 weeks and it's time to go back. And so this is a surreal experience. I'm taking my child in to the same offices that I work in, and that we take care of other patients in, the audio booths where patients come in to have their hearing tested. And so we go in and we're sitting there in the absolute pitch silence, because it's if you've ever been inside an audio booth, it's dead quiet. And Lalita's asleep and they have the test on, and Reski and I are just looking at each other and knowing that this might be the definitive moment where we're taking care of a deaf child. They came back 15 minutes later and they said her hearing is perfectly normal. But in that moment, it's a race to the bottom and back in terms of what Swami has planned for you. You don't know. So again, my mom was right. She was right, and even if she had deafness, Swami would have had a plan, and that's what he wanted us to get to. He wanted us to get to the point where we were ready to accept either outcome. So, of course, life moves on, and you quickly, you learn these lessons, and you move on and on to the next thing. So I'm now in practice as a surgeon a couple of years, and I'm starting to live the challenges of being a surgeon, ethical dilemmas, right? So when they bring in a prisoner, sometimes you're taking care of the guy who shot the other guy, and you're taking care of both of them because they both have medical needs. And what's right? If you know that this guy tried to kill this guy, should you prioritize your care to this person or this person? We say, oh yes, of course, in theory, you should take care of them both, but in reality, when both have needs, and we're human, right? And we have our biases, and so Swami started highlighting some of these challenges very early. I had a prisoner who came in chains, and the patient has, the prisons are so used to being treated very poorly by the guards, and so just to be able to be treated like a human, and I remember thinking of Swami, how would you take care of this prisoner? And I don't even want to know what crime they committed, because without seeing it, I can treat them just like an objective, any other person. And so it's just this moment of where we have this opportunity when we're serving to just ignore whatever, all our only duty is to take care of the problem ahead. It's not my job to judge him for whatever he did wrong. I just have to take care of his problem. So while I'm getting used to practice at Yale, there's a group that was brought over from Ukraine. There was a group of observers, and so they had emailed us ahead of time, and they said, we have a group of observers coming. Are you guys okay if they come into your operating room and they want to learn from you? So of course I'm like, oh, you want to learn from Dr. Mohan? Of course, please be my guest. The ego swells, right? And so the day that they're observing in my operating room, they all come in. It's like a group of 15 people. And the operating room's already crowded. There's 8 people and everyone's standing around watching. And this day I'm doing an operation to reanimate someone's face who can't move. And so I have to find a specific nerve deep inside the face. And so we start the dissection. I'm talking through everything of how to think about it and how to do it. And I'm dissecting. And it's not exactly where I expect it to be. Things are a little bit off. And so then I explain that to them. Sometimes these things happen. It's a part of the process. Blah blah blah. I'm dissecting. I cannot find it. And I'm starting to like get a little bit worried in my mind because I'm like, did I injure it? Did I cut it by accident? Like, why can't I find this? And suddenly they're all starting to talk in Ukrainian. And I'm like, oh God, Swami, please help me find this. If I can't find this nerve, I can't do this operation. I cannot finish it. And we're a solid 3 hours in. And I'm dissecting, and I just absolutely find it. I hit bone. If you hit bone, that means that you're past the nerve. I'm like, oh God. And so I'm very worried, very stressed, not only because not only is the patient gonna suffer, my reputation and everything is at stake. So, but ignore the noise. I focus on Swami. I say, Swami, I need your help. Please help me find this. And I'm at the point where I'm about to abort the operation. I'm ready to say, we've looked and looked, we can't find it. Unfortunately, we have to close up. One last spread, and there's a glimmer of white in the very deepest portion of the cavity. And then I took the nerve stimulated, whole face jumps. There's a big sigh of relief in the operating room. And again, Swami has his way of just humbling you, right? You think you're someone that's accomplished and you've done this and that. He will take you from here to here in a second. And so just a reminder of maintaining that humility no matter what, and remembering that no matter how high you get, you still need him to carry you. And so that's why I put this prayer of surrender up. And there's this prayer of surrender, Swami has a beautiful quote. I really recommend reading the whole thing if you haven't. But he says, "When I must lead you into a different path than the one you expect, I carry you in my arms." And there's that other prayer about footprints. There'll be two sets of footprints walking through the sand, and at one point it's single, and then the devotee asks God, like, why did you abandon me during this period of time? And God says, those were the moments where I was carrying you through. And so after the Ukrainian observers left, I stayed in touch with a couple of them, and a few months later, they sent another email. Right? So the first email they had sent saying, can we come and observe? Everyone was gung-ho, 10 responses. Everybody saying, yeah, absolutely, me too, I'm happy to help. They sent an email and they say, we have a lot of patients that need help in Ukraine. Would you be willing to come over and work with us here? This is the email thread that gets 0 responses, right? Crickets, there's nothing, nobody volunteers, no one raises their hand. So I bring up the idea to Rasika and I say, what do you think about me going? And she said, absolutely not. Are you crazy? We have 2 young kids. This is a completely unreasonable request. Don't even think about it. So I said, okay, fine, that's fair. But in the meantime, I'm talking to some of the other people who've gone on the trip. So I talked to this one guy, he's 70 years old, he's at the end of his career. He says, look, I've been 5 or 6 times. It's pretty safe. We can't guarantee anything, but I've made it so far. And he's like, and here's the thing: if I die, I've lived my life, and I'm dying doing something that I care about. And I said, okay. And then I talked to another guy. This guy's 67, end of his career. His children are all set up. Everyone's, everything's good to go. And he also said, yeah, I've been a couple of times, but as long as I feel like if he's Ukrainian, so he says, if I die here, I died for my country. It's okay for me. So the problem is, a couple of weeks later, they send a follow-up email and they say, is anyone available? We're still very interested. And the problem was that what they were asking for is exactly what I do. So I do facial reconstruction after trauma or cancer of the face or weakness of the face, and that's exactly the skill they wanted. So it's really hard for me to say no, knowing that I had exactly the skill set that they were looking for. So I revisit the conversation with Rasika, and I give her a lot of credit because she considered it and she really thought about it, and she realized how important this work could be, and she finally gave her permission. So a couple months later, we're starting to plan the cases, and we're starting to see just horrific injuries that these soldiers have been through. All kinds of bomb blasts to the face, missing eyes, missing noses, missing ears, missing mouths. And so eventually we make our way across. And so when you want to go to Ukraine, you don't just go. You have to fly into Poland. And then from Poland, they took us in a van across the border. And we have to go through Polish security, go through Ukrainian security, and then the van continues to the shop. And of course, once you're across the border, anything can happen, right? And so you're not sure exactly. But eventually we made our way to the city of Lviv, which is in Western Ukraine. And when you get there, you look and it looks like a pretty European city, right? Everything looks fine on the surface. So then we check into our hotel and they say, welcome to Ukraine. Here's the pool, here's the breakfast, and here's the bomb shelter. And that's when I realized that we were in a war-torn country and the conflict was real. So of course, every step of the way, I started feeling this kind of deep sense of this weird, unsettled feeling in my stomach for the next few days. And I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but I realized is as we take it for granted that we can go to work and come home and we're going to be safe, right? But what if that safety is suddenly pulled from underneath you, and there's this unsettlement of anything could happen today, and I don't know. But we begin our work. We start seeing our patients, this is us seeing a couple of patients here and working with the local doctors. I'm training the idea of the mission is to train the local surgeons in our techniques so that they can continue the work by themselves, even when we're not there. These were strenuous days. The longest surgery I did there was 18 hours. You're there the whole time. You don't know if it's light or dark outside. All you know is that the patient is in front of you, and that's what you have to take care of. And so we're training and we're doing what we can, and then the second night I wake up to this. I don't know if you're able to hear that. So this is called an air raid alarm, and basically when a missile has been fired into the country, this alarm is put on. And then in the hotel, this is the message.
Air alarm. Keep calm and go down to -1st floor of the hotel. Attention, do not use elevators during air alarm.
So it's an air alarm, basically signifying that there's an active attack, and you have to go to the bomb shelter. And so, imagine 2:30 in the morning, you're asleep, and you wake up to this. And so, what do you do? Again, that in my mind, Swami will take care. Swami will take care of it, and that's the only thing I have. And so we all evacuate and we go down, and fortunately the attack was not anywhere near where we were. It was somewhere further away. So the next morning we're back at work. We have to continue the surgeries for the patients. This is I just wanted to share some of the things. Later in the trip we walked into. So there used to be a big soccer field and next to one of the cemeteries in Lviv. And after the war began, they ran out of space in the cemetery, so they put a couple of graves on the soccer field next to it. 2 years into the war, the entire soccer field is filled with graves. All of these are different fresh graveyard, and you see soldiers walking around the local area, and just heartbreaking to think. When we were here in the graveyard, I saw a young wife with 2 kids come up to one of the graves and break down. And that's when it hit me. I realized, like, what privilege am I? How much fortune have I been given that Swami has me in a situation where healthy children, healthy life, safe life, and so there was so much that moment really taught me. This was our group of surgeons. We actually went back again. So I went in May, and then you build a connection with the local surgeons. They want you to come back and take care of the patients again. So we went back again in May, and so this is us with one of the patients there. But I will say, despite how depressing all of this sounds, the strength of the Ukrainian people is tremendous. So for those who were not fighting, they're in the streets trying to keep morale up and keep the faith that victory will be theirs. And so it was just incredibly inspiring to, ask myself, if we were in the same situation, would we have the same grit, the same strength to be able to hang on while a war is being waged? So, I have a couple other things I just want to say before I finish up. I think it seems like Swami gives us these challenges in life, and then somehow it seems like, oh, there's all these successes as well. But at least for the young people in the room, I just wanted to share a list of failures to remind you that even when success comes, there's a lot of failures along the way. So obviously didn't get into Swami school, didn't get into Stanford or Harvard for college, didn't get into Michigan medical school. I never completed a formal music or a dance arangetram. Pretty average test scores. I once placed third in a singing contest where there were 3 people. So I think failures are faith builders. I think we should have gratitude for Swami giving us these challenges to help us grow. And I'll finish with one thing. So after the Ukraine trip, I went straight to India to do service in Swami's hospital. And so this was this past year in April. And so when I got there, I was part of the mobile hospital. And I met a ophthalmologist there on the trip. And I was telling him about all these cutting edge techniques that we do here in the United States. And he was very interested. And he said, this is fantastic. I hope that we're able to use your services somehow. And we kind of left it at that. And then the next morning, he sends me a WhatsApp message, and he says, I think Swami has your first patient. Would you be willing to see him before you go? I said, absolutely. And he says, oh, by the way, he's the previous headmaster of the school, Mr. Rajkumar. So 20 years later, Swami finally, full circle, answered my question for why he wanted me to come back to the United States. He wanted me to come here, train, and bring these skills back to take care of his devotee, the same man who had rejected me then. But on paper, it's a rejection, but as part of the larger scale, it completely makes sense, right? Swami had a plan the whole time. It's just that he could see that and I couldn't from my vantage. So it was an eye-opening experience for me. And again, Swami will take care, and he did. And so I want to end there and share again. I hope that you've been at least brought a little bit closer to believing that faith is the best gift that we can give Swami for his birthday and in the future. Jai Sai Ram. Oh, okay. Sure. Okay. I'm being asked to share a couple more things. I hope I'm not keeping everyone from lunch, so I'll keep it short. My mom does a much better job of explaining these stories, but so when we moved to Michigan, we had a couple of instances where we had some pujas and great devotees of Swami come by the house, and twice, on 2 occasions, there was manifestations of vibhuti throughout the house, and so all pretty much. So my mom is a very she's crazy for Sai. Okay, so there's nothing in this world that matters to her more than Bhagawan, and so our whole house is just filled with Swami pictures. Every wall you go through, even the bathroom, there are pictures of Swami everywhere. And on every single one of these pictures, there was vibhuti of some sort that had appeared after these events, and in some places there was actually manifestations of like lingams and rudram and kumkumam and chandanam in different places, and it's obviously a miracle to speak, but I think for us, as growing up, and we had already kind of convinced, we were convinced that Swami was God. So these things by that point were almost confirmations of what we already knew. And we knew that Bhagawan was there. And so even in the car, you know, with a Swami picture in the car, there's vibhuti like in the car from that manifestation, and the even to this day, like, you know, people come to see the vibhuti manifestations, and by no means do we take it as something, oh, you know, we did something great. It's absolutely, Swami says, okay, with great power comes great responsibility. So live my message, live my ideals, and, you know, let everyone learn from what I want to share with the world. And so those manifestations, I think, have really stood the test of time as a sense of responsibility to carry on Swami's message forward. And I'm trying to think if there's any other specific events, but if you're ever in Michigan, please come. We would love to have you. And I think I'll finish with that. So.
Sairam. Thank you very much, Dr. Suresh Mohan, for sharing some of your journey and how Swami's faith in Swami's grace and protection kept them throughout their lives going forward. I was struck by one thing though. You know, when we ask somebody to come and give a talk, they are there as a speaker because somehow we think, okay, they have got some fantastic things to say and they must be really greatest people on earth and things like that, right? So what I mean is, it's easy to speak about one's successes. You know, I prayed to Baba and this happened. Fantastic. What does it prove? That you are a great devotee because you asked and the God gave. Right? That's the conclusion we make most of the times. But there are many times when you ask and you don't get what you ask. And if you can keep your faith, then that's even greater success as a devotee than to say, oh, you know, I believe in Sai Baba because I prayed to Sai Baba and this happened to me. When it happens to you, it's easy to be a devotee. When it doesn't happen to you, that's when it is hard. Right? To believe still that, you know, look, I prayed and if I didn't get it, it's because in His infinite wisdom, He chose not to give it. An attitude of a devotee who believes that everything that happens is by God's grace. Therefore, whether what happens to me is something that is of my liking or not of my liking, I will accept both as the prasadam from God. The day we are able to say that, that's when we are actually heroes as a devotee. I mean, you don't hero, you know, understand what I mean, right? You see, so I greatly appreciate that you spoke about the times that things didn't work out for you, the way you wanted. But it's the greater thing that you realize in later on that, look, there was a plan. I didn't know it. He knew it, right? To be able to say that, to share about one's failures and be able to say that in spite of that, I held on to my faith and that saw me through my life's journey. I think that is a very great lesson that you shared with us. I greatly appreciate that. I met his parents. I didn't know when we invited him as a speaker here that I had already met his parents. I didn't know. So on a conversation that I was having with him, I asked a few questions and this and that, and then I realized that actually I met his parents. So it is, I can see the same level of humility in him, in spite of being so successful. To maintain that level of humility is really, I would say this, is really the hallmark of a devotee. And we are very grateful to Bhagawan for having brought him to us and to enable him to share his experiences with us. Great appreciation and sincere thanks to you, Dr. Suresh Mohan. And we are going for lunch break now. And when do we reassemble? Okay, cutting. Oh, we are going to cut the cake, birthday cake for Swami. Is the we could, if we can have a table or something here, we can manage. Are you going to sing?